Sports Hot Seat is brought to you in part by Sport Buff in Place Alexis Neon, where you'll find the entire line of starter sportswear.
Welcome to the Sports Hot Seat. I'm Mitch Garber with Mitch Melnick and third-time return guest Elliott Price. We're going to do a little preseason baseball show today. This show will be aired, I believe, day after the opener in Houston.
Right. Welcome back.
Good to be here.
How you doing?
Not bad.
Not going to be as busy in the booth this year?
No,
unfortunately.
we've got 10 less games than last year, which was, 12 less games than our first year, but so far we're still on.
And a new partner, Bobby Winkles, has retired. He's playing golf in La Quinta, California, and you're going to work with Rich Griffin.
I'm sorry to see Bobby go. You kind of get used to working with the same person. You finally work out all the things that are a little bit of a problem in the beginning, and you can't find a nicer guy than Bobby. But I've had an opportunity to work with Rich when Bobby's done some television, when Ken Singleton started late the first year, and who knows more about the ball club than Rich.
And funny.
Yeah, that should be a lot of fun. We try not, I mean, when we open up the microphones, the advice from Danny Gallivan always is right out there. Have fun. That's what we try to do.
That's what we did. We used to work together, you know,
yeah, I know,
on the air, and that was our attitude. And some people thought we laughed too much.
Well, you know, there's not enough of that, I don't find, on radio, especially in sports. A lot of guys in suits, well, not here, but a lot of guys in suits.
I wear one every morning.
A lot of guys in suits, not having fun. Very little humor, very straight. And I think that you and Rich, despite the fact you won't be on that often, I know that you would like to work as many games as possible. And people should know that.
And Dave knows that, too.
Yeah, but you really love, you love what you do. You love doing the play-by-play, and you have to do as many games as you could.
Well, actually,
really.
I told Dave a couple years ago I was putting a little cyanide in his coffee every day. He said, don't worry, it won't take that long. Dave, I'm waiting.
No, but you're not doing as many games this year. But seriously speaking, well, not unseriously speaking, with Rich, do you think you're going to have sort of a different approach than you had with Bobby? Bobby had the experience. Bobby was a baseball man. Rich is more like the rest of us, I guess, just grew up loving baseball.
I think that there's an obvious difference. Bobby was involved in baseball and had an idea of the players' minds, the coaches' minds, the managers for, 40, 50 years. Rich has had an opportunity to be close to Expos, so he should have stories from the ball club for a long period of time, and I think he'll have a better idea of some of my jokes that might have gone over Bobby's head.
Before we get into baseball, I want to mention something else, because Stephen Dubinsky, who we had on 2 weeks ago, mentioned that he saw you on ESPN2 doing the Pee Wee hockey tournament in Quebec. You were doing that with?
I did that with Craig Minervy, and I did another one, one game that ran on TSN and on a local network. Transworld Television ran them throughout Canada with Ted Blackman. And it really was an experience. I'd never done television before, and it really was a lot of fun. Some talented players. You consider the players that have come through there over the years, and I think we saw a couple of kids this year that we can look forward to. One of them is a pretty good baseball player, too, from Sault Ste. Marie by the name of Rico Fata, and you'll want to remember that name.
What I couldn't believe when I saw the kids is when I was 13.
How big they are.
Yeah.
But weren't there kids in the hockey league that you played in that
just
were?
a couple.
Yeah.
Just a couple.
Maybe
they were short kids in Chamonix. I don't know, but that's what
struck
struck me.
A lot of big kids. There was a goaltender, 6'3", a couple of kids from the Chicago team that were over 6 feet. Some big kids with some weight on them. But it's amazing. There was this little kid that played for a Quebec team who weighed 58 pounds. So
hey, I was 80 pounds, 5 feet.
You're still 80 pounds
at 16 years old. So I don't even want to think back to 13. I know you were a small kid, though. I mean,
yes,
you're a big guy. You're over 200 pounds.
Yeah.
You are?
I am over 200 pounds, yes.
Wow.
He's a heavyweight.
5'10", 200 pounds.
Media heavyweight wrestling champion.
That's why he wears the big jacket.
All right, let's get into some baseball talk now.
Okay.
You don't like to take pleasure in the misfortune of other people, but if you're a diehard Expo fan, you really don't care if Ron Gant ever plays again for the Atlanta Braves. And you cross your fingers and hope for the best for John Kruk. We all do, because he's one of the great people in baseball. But the Phillies are going to be without John Kruk until at least late May. They traded Terry Mulholland this is a real opening for the Expos, who have stressed the importance of getting off to a good start.
I didn't hear any tears last year when John Wetland kicked the screen and was out the first month of the season. Nobody in the National League East was crying, oh, poor Expos. That's the way it goes, and who knows what will happen to the Expos as far as injuries are concerned. We're at the point now where the Expos, if I were in the position of deciding injuries this year, I would hope everybody would get injured. The Expos have as much minor league talent rising to the AAA level as anybody, and I think, along with the Atlanta Braves, they can sustain some injuries that a team like the Philadelphia Phillies cannot. I think Terry Mulholland hurts them an awful lot, not only what he can do for the Phillies, but what he did against the Expos. I mean, he shut them down, shut down the running game like no other pitcher in the National League, and not only am I glad he's not in Philadelphia, he's out of the National League.
We talked about this last week. This Expo team is not the best Expo team we've ever seen on the field on paper, but probably the deepest team. And, you know, you make a good point. You don't hope for injuries, but at least you know that if someone goes down in the outfield, you've got 4 or 5 guys back there that can take his place, and that includes Curtis Pride and Rondell White. Just a bunch of guys that can come in, and you know that they can do a job. Maybe not as good a job, obviously, as Marquise or Larry Walker, but a very deep team in the infield and in the outfield this year.
Yeah, I think the only question mark as far as depth is concerned is at catcher. You look at the bench and you can pull a Randy Milligan off the bench to go deep late in the ball game if in fact Cliff Floyd becomes your everyday first baseman. You have some strength in the middle infield. You can go to a Freddie Benavides. You have Lou Fraser, so you've got some speed, you've got some power, and it looks like you've got some bats off the bench as well, which is, as a group, probably the best they've had in years.
Milligan's another factor, though. You know, they played very well against the Atlanta Braves last season. Milligan eats up lefties, and when they throw Glavine and Avery and I guess Merker, he's going to be a big factor. I think he's an overlooked guy. People should remember that Milligan, I think, is going to be a big contributor in '94.
Let's talk about the catching for a second, because Tim Laker has become a pretty big disappointment. Last year, he was sick during the offseason. He came in looking a little lighter, looking a little weaker, and sort of played that way during the season. Now Louis Pujols is upset that he's changing his catching stance. Harper's upset that he's changed his hitting stance, and the Expos go out and get Lenny Webster. That sort of makes, you know, Tim Laker's future questionable. He's not happy about it. You got Tim Spear back there, Joe Siddle. You talk about depth at catcher. We got numbers there. What about the pickup of Lenny Webster, obviously to take the place of Tim Laker?
Well, by now we know, because this will run after the season starts. But Webster fits in anywhere from 2 to 5. If you look at Laker's position, he was no better than 4th coming into training camp. And because, I mean, you would say that he's closer to 2nd than 4th, but the 3rd guy makes the team as a backup, as someone who can help things and doesn't necessarily get to hit that much. Let's remember that Tim Spear had an excellent second half last year. And I want to know, you know, how much a person concentrate on the fact that his father passed away, and his father was dying through the first half of the season. And after that was over and he went home and he buried his dad and he dedicated the rest of the season to that memory, he hit pretty well. So you would think that the Expos would have a decent backup if he's the guy that's going to be there.
But Laker was clearly rushed. I mean, he hit, what, 240 at Double-A, and they wanted him to make the jump to the majors. That's tough.
It's tough. It happens to a lot of guys. You look, in some instances, it can ruin some players. Years ago, the Texas Rangers brought up David Clyde because he was a local product and a first-round draft choice, and they wanted him to pitch in front of a big crowd, and he never did make it. The Expos rushed Baylor Moore. There are some players that you rush and they just have the makeup. Maybe Delino arrived a little bit early, but he just took to it right away, and it has to do with your own personal makeup, maybe even more than the tools you have when you arrive.
So what about Cliff Floyd in that vein? What about Rondell White in that vein? Is Floyd maybe being rushed?
I think that Rondell White is a different case. White's a year ahead of Cliff Floyd, and he has made the gradual progression. Floyd has moved along quickly. The one thing in his favor, and it showed last year at spring training when he was, if not the last guy to go, the second last, is that he fits in real well with the big guys. He's not intimidated, and in the attitude from where he's come from, I think he's a pretty strong character, and that will help him. I think he should be more concerned about his tools at the major league level than his attitude. Yeah,
you mentioned Delino DeShields. That, to me, is the big question. Again, this is being taped a couple of weeks before the start of the season, so maybe things will change, but Felipe Alou said that Grissom is going to hit third and Lansing is going to lead off. I would imagine that if Moises Alou is healthy, that it would make more sense to have him hitting third, Grissom leading off, and maybe Lansing hit second.
I would think that's the way Felipe sees it. He didn't want to catch himself in a position where Who knows how long Moises is going to be out? Who knows? He may have even played yesterday for all we know. But as far as the top of the lineup is concerned, Felipe wants to make sure that Grissom's going to drive in some runs from the beginning to have some offense out of that third spot. Your best hitter hits third. I believe Moises is the team's best overall hitter. But if he's not there, someone's got to take up the slack. Someone has to hit in front of Larry Walker. And as much as we'd love to see the top of the lineup a little bit more offensive, I think he's left without a choice till Moises comes back.
Keep in mind that no manager in the major leagues used more combinations and permutations in the batting order last season than Felipe did. And he may start doing that again. There's some guys he has to see. What is Floyd going to do, and where does he fit in comfortably? Mike Lansing, not a natural leadoff hitter. He may be a good leadoff hitter. He can steal bases. But I think that Felipe has at least the talent to play with and juggle this lineup.
Even if Cliff Floyd does the kind of job that they're hoping that he does, we're still going to see Randy Milligan, I hope, on a regular basis against left-handed pitching.
Absolutely.
And Felipe likes to move the guys in and out, and that's the most important thing to keep 25 people happy.
He likes to run the offense, too, from the dugout. He's tremendous at knowing when to steal. The Expos don't get thrown out under Felipe Alou. They have always run, but they don't get thrown out. He knows when to run. He likes to play hit and run.
Maybe even better is the way he controls that part of the game from the opposition. Felipe is in total control when it comes to pitch outs, when it comes to throwing to first base, when it comes to all that stuff. And the Expos have done well, and they've had to, because let's be honest, in the last couple of years, they haven't had a catcher that throws very well. They have to keep their eye on that area of the game to help out Darren Fletcher, unless he's improved since the last time we saw him.
Speaking of Randy Milligan, by the way, there's a guy, you talked a lot last year about the Expos' necessity of picking up a $600,000 to $700,000 a year guy. I would think that Randy Milligan would fit right into the mold of the player that you were talking about.
He's exactly what we were talking about. He's exactly the equivalent of what the Phillies did with Thompson and Incaviglia and Eisenreich last year.
One can only hope that the situation works out as it did the last time they did something like this. The guy they paid over $1 million to didn't do a darn thing, but it worked out pretty well for Galarraga because it got him going. The Expos were so nervous at the beginning of that season because Galarraga had a terrible training camp, as Floyd. Well, Floyd's not having a terrible camp, but Galarraga had a horrible camp, and they still had him making the team, and they went out and they bought Jason Thompson, paid him over $1 million, and Thompson was gone quickly.
2 weeks.
Galarraga homered in the opener at Atlanta, and the rest was history after that. But it gave them something else to think about, and it gave them an option.
And keep in mind that Floyd didn't play all that much AAA last year, and when he did, he struggled. And he started to come on at the end, but he did struggle at AAA.
He also didn't play a whole lot of first base. It's something else for him to think about. It's, I would imagine, much easier when the ball's coming at you from 250 feet away than when it's coming at you from 90 feet, and there are some pretty big left-handed hitters, and imagine what it's like to stare down Fred McGriff, you know?
Well, the three veterans, sort of veterans, that the Expos picked up, I think are going to help this team a lot in different ways. Neither of the three of them, a superstar. Milligan, Reddy, and Benavides. Benavides is going to be, I think, a welcome addition to this team. Reddy was last year, and he's showing it in spring training, although I don't know what he's done, like you said, in the last 2 weeks of spring, but looks pretty good. And Randy Milligan.
From what we've heard about Randy Milligan, that may be his best attribute, what he does for the club in the clubhouse. He's played in Baltimore, he's played in Cincinnati, he was a member of the New York Mets system and the Pirates system, and everywhere he has gone, those have been the reports on him, and really that's something that's needed in the clubhouse. Delino is a loss in that area, and it's really tough for a player to come in and take control of a clubhouse unless he walks in with the respect that Milligan already has, and that should really help.
Let's talk about Delino DeShields. What has to happen this year to make this trade not be as bad as many people say that it was?
Pedro wins 15 games.
Well, I don't agree with you. I mean, if Pedro wins 15 games, a lot of other pitchers you could have gotten for less than Delino could win 12 or 11. That's only 4 games more that you're getting out of Pedro. And I got to think that
Delino lost the division by 3 games last year.
I got to think that Delino, but I got to think Delino wins you 4 or 5 games himself.
Well, that
more during a season.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue against the attributes of Delino DeShields, but I think if Pedro Martinez in his first year as a starter in the majors wins 15 games, then that's what they're looking for. 15 games, about 200 innings. That's what he has to do.
I think that the biggest hurt as far as the trade of Delino DeShields is concerned is the infield defense. You're already dealing with 3 youngsters. You have to think that third base is going to be better overall because Frank Bullock started there last year. You have to think that first base is going to be better overall because I think both you guys played there last year and they're thinking of giving me a shot. Cordero has to improve defensively at shortstop, so the loss you take is at second base. The unit coming together is very important, but you look at the overall scheme of thing of the Expos, and that has to worry you more than anything else, is the infield defense. If that's fine, I think the Delino trade is fine. If it's not, then you've got to worry.
Well, you know, Mike Lansing told me the other day that, you know, one of the main differences this year is he never had a chance last season to really play a position. He played third, he played short, he played second. We've seen his gun arm from third, we've seen it from short. Doesn't really need it from second, but it doesn't hurt. I think that if this guy gets to play, like he will, after 50 games or 40 games, he's going to be really comfortable there. He has shown some signs of being a pretty good defensive baseball player, except that every game he was switching positions, and I'm sure, I've never changed positions every day, it's got to be difficult to go from third to short to second and back and forth.
I think he looked most comfortable as a shortstop and looks like he could be a major league shortstop.
Says he wants to be a shortstop.
Well, there's your problem right there. The Expos were talking about moving Cordero to third base, but geez, look what's coming up behind him. Sean Berry had a decent year last year. You know, in less than 300 at-bats, he had 12, 13 home runs. He stole some bases. He runs pretty well for a big guy. And you got Shane Andrews coming up right behind him. So you really don't have a choice. If you want Mike Lansing to play, right now he's got to play second base.
And Cordero's got to stay at short.
Absolutely. He's got to play there every day, and you decide somewhere along the line what you're going to do with him. But as long as he's going to be with this team, he's got to be your major league shortstop. He's got to play every day.
How many errors did he have last year? 39 or 37?
No, it was about 35.
I think
35.
I think that's pretty common, though, for a shortstop in his first year in the major leagues. You look at guys like Royce Clayton in San Francisco and Jose Offerman in Los Angeles, and look at their stats last year after they'd been in the majors for a year and a half. Check out what they did in the first half of last year and see how they settled down finally after getting some experience at a very tough position in the major leagues for a young player.
Well, I mean, we're going through all the positions. I don't think we have to go through the outfield very long if Moises is healthy. One of the best outfields in baseball. What we haven't touched on really is the pitching staff. And that's where we're going to either look very smart or not very smart, because we're taping the show 3 weeks before the end of spring training, and we'll see what's going to happen.
Okay, at this point we don't know who's in the number 5 spot. We have a pretty good idea 1 to 4. As starting a season in comparison to last year, no matter what, you've got to say this is a better starting staff. Last year, after Dennis Martinez and Kenny Hill, there wasn't a whole lot. You started the season with huge question marks, 3, 4, and 5. What was it?
Bottenfield was in there?
Bottenfield, Nabolts, and Jimmy Jones.
Yeah.
So you got to think that from 3 to 5, and while you don't use your 5th pitcher very much in the first month or so, your top 4 guys look pretty good. If Pedro can settle down and learn how to be a starter again, learn how to pace himself, they say he's got great stuff. That sounds good to me.
You also have an unhappy Mel Rojas.
You got a lot of unhappy players. That's
I don't think you have a lot of unhappy players.
You have an unhappy Pedro Martinez.
Moises Alou was unhappy last year,
That's
and he had
right.
a great year, and he's making 1.4 now.
But Pedro Martinez is not unhappy being a starting pitcher. He's
No, I
unhappy about
understand
other
that.
things. I'm talking about a guy who doesn't want to do this job. It's a lot worse to not want to do the job you're doing.
It all comes down to this. I think it has more to do with what Mel thinks he can create for himself in the future as far as dollars and cents are concerned than anything else. Baseball is a game of biding your time and waiting for your moment. Every player has the opportunity when he becomes a free agent to do whatever he wants with his career. When Mel Rojas reaches the point where he's a free agent, well, he can start shopping himself around as a
Let me
closer.
put you on the spot here.
Okay.
Because of the timing of this taping. If the Expos do, in fact, trade Mel Rojas before the start of the season, what would they be looking for? They can get something
Starting
decent.
pitcher.
A starting pitcher?
Absolutely. They say you never have enough starters. If we're sitting here right now and we're questioning who's going to be in the number 5 spot, that means that there's room for improvement.
But
Denny Boucher must have the
considering the
insight.
situation in this city and how well he pitched last year, I would assume that Boucher is going to start.
I would hope that Denny Boucher starts because he's the best 5th pitcher in spring training, not because of his situation in the city. Right now, as we speak, the Expos have a huge question as far as having a left-hander in their bullpen is concerned. They do not have one right now. Butch Henry's pitching all right, but Looney got sent to the minor leagues. He didn't make it. And the rest of your bullpen, while strong, is all right-handed. And if all you're going to ask
While
from
strong, I mean, there's some guys in there that I hope are in Ottawa, not in
well, I'm talking
Jeff
about
Shaw
John Wetland,
being
Mel
one of them.
Rojas. You're talking about a 10th pitcher. I'm talking about the guys you're looking to after the 6th inning to put the game away for you in succession. You'd have to think that Scott Rojas and Wetland are pretty good. And if you have a left-hander that can get the occasional guy out, you're talking about the last pitcher on the team.
Where's John Candelaria? Is he around? Bob McClure?
I think Candy signed somewhere.
McClure.
He told us
McClure's
5 years ago he was retiring.
Yeah.
And if you get
McClure's a coach somewhere, I think, right?
I think he stayed with the Marlins.
Yeah.
If you get a fifth pitcher, Denny Boucher probably be a pretty good relief pitcher. I mean, he's shown decent stuff, and he really has shown it for 6 innings or 5 innings rather than 9 or 8. Might be a pretty good long reliever. And I think that's probably where he'll end up one day. I don't know that Denny Boucher is a fifth starter for the rest of his career.
I would think if the Expos go with 10 pitchers, the left-hander in the bullpen has to be the guy who's going to come in just to face the lefty.
I'm more concerned about Hill and Facero than I am about a guy like Reeder. I think Reeder, what you see now, is what he's going to be the rest of his career. You put him in a rocking chair on the mound.
Are we concerned about Kenny Hill because of his health?
I'm concerned because there seems to be a problem with him every year, and he is supposedly the ace, although Facero maybe is the ace. I don't know who started yesterday, but one of those two guys. Facero, this is his first year as a major league starter.
It was something that we all discussed during a New Year's Eve show we did on the radio station, in that we're looking at a lot of guys who've had one good year, and that's a scary thought. You got Kirk Reeder, first time around. You got Jeff Facero, first time as a starter. You got Pedro Martinez, who's going to be first time as a starter. You're looking at Mike Lansing, who's going to be an everyday player for the first time in his career. You're looking for Darren Fletcher to repeat what he did in the second half last year. You're looking for Sean Berry to continue to improve off his first year in the major leagues. So you're really asking for a lot of people to continue to improve and go along the lines that they've established for themselves in a very short period of time. And that's a bit of a scary thought.
This is verbatim, though, what we said on this show last year, spring training edition, before the season started. Well, you're asking for Delino DeShields, and you're asking for, I mean,
but
yeah,
you are. I mean,
you don't have a lot of old guys on this team that are, proven stars. Ken Griffey's not on this team. He's not going to come up with Marquise Grissom and Larry Walker. You know what you're going to get out of these guys.
Which Griffey? He's younger than the Expos.
I think most of the guys that Elliott mentioned, I think most people have a pretty good idea what they're going to do.
Yeah.
You don't see too many of them crapping out, bottoming out in 1994.
You mentioned Kirk Reeder. I don't know if you saw what Joe Kerrigan said about Kirk Reeder. He said that he and Tom Glavine have the best control in baseball, and that's
along with Bob Tewksbury.
Pretty lofty quote from Kerrigan.
And just look at the numbers right through his professional career, and you could see it. And he's got such an easy, fluid motion. I don't think he's ever going to get hurt. And I'm looking forward to watching him, and I know Elliott's looking forward to broadcasting him because he's going to get home early.
Yeah, that's always nice. We could use 5 of those guys, and I don't know why they don't do something to speed up the game. If you sit there watching a baseball game on television, get out your stopwatch and click between pitches, especially when there's a guy on base. And there's a rule.
But it's not just the pitchers. There's guys like Dykstra,
well,
hitters who step out every pitch. It's not the pitchers
because they're not in control of deciding how much time between pitches. If the umpire wants him to move faster, he can do it. It's within his jurisdiction.
What about Jeff Facero? He showed some pretty good stuff early spring. I can't say what he's done late spring. He had a bad outing in mid-spring. That's where we are right now.
I really would hate to compare what a guy does during spring training and what happens during a regular season. Facero not only has a good fastball, but he's got a lot of different breaking pitches, and they're touch pitches, something that takes time to come to. You'll notice that the curveballers and the guys who throw tight sliders will have a lot more trouble during spring training than the guys who just blow the fastball behind hitters. And from what we saw, I mean, it's hard to believe that this man he had a pretty good short career as an Expo reliever. But this was, he was among the top pitchers in the league through the second half, and it's tough to put that back on. You only wish he could have continued on from last year, because the break means you have to start all over
He's
again.
Very tough to hit against.
Yes,
I think most of the Braves,
that's
that one
Randy
game when he Randy. Maybe that's, well, he didn't get to go to the fantasy camp, so he had to do something, right? But the night he struck out 13 Braves, most of the Braves in the clubhouse afterwards were mentioning that's the best stuff they had seen from anybody.
He was the only pitcher that pitched for the Expos last year to strike out 10 or more, and he did it more than once. And what did he make, 10 starts? 12 starts. He was unbelievable. He was as good as any pitcher in the National League during that stretch, and that's saying something. To repeat it, that's tough to say.
You mentioned the fifth starter earlier. Another name that will probably come up at some point is Gabe White, who Felipe likes very much, lefty. Are there any other names that are not going to start the season with the Expos that we are going to see at some point?
I'll tell you somebody that's had a pretty good camp very quietly is Gil Heredia. And down the stretch last year, they put him into some situations. If you're looking, maybe not as a starter, but as a long guy, if you carry an 11th pitcher, he may even be the 10th guy right now, except that leaves you void over left-handed.
Yeah. So would I. Joey Eichen's name is also one that we hear a lot. We're waiting for Joey Eichen to arrive. And this might be a year early for Joey Eichen.
Yeah. Heredia seems to have good stuff and a good attitude, and he's had a good camp. And it's amazing. I mean, if Jeff Fassero can turn the corner at age 30 as he did last year, who's to say that somebody else can't at this point?
Let me put you on the spot, Mitch. You said earlier this month that Les Lancaster will make this baseball team. Is he on the team today?
That was before an 8-run inning.
It's only an 8-run inning in
Well,
spring.
the guy's had a proven track record of being a very good middle reliever, except for 1 year in Detroit where a lot of pitchers have bad years.
Yeah. Is he on the team right now?
I don't
put it
think
this
so.
way.
You don't think so?
Roger Clemens gets away with an 8-run inning, okay?
4 of them were earned. There were 3 errors that inning.
He got rocked for a
Lancaster.
pair of long
But,
home runs.
Yeah,
We only have a few minutes left.
I don't think so.
From a playoff perspective, if there was no wild card this year, which thankfully there is, I believe we'd be sitting here, and probably each of us would say the Expos have a shot, a legitimate shot at winning.
If there was no wild card this year, maybe the Atlanta Braves wouldn't be in the Expos division. You'd be saying
True.
the Expos are heads and tails above what's behind them right now.
So then with the wild card, it almost, evens
Makes
things
it
out.
tougher.
Oh, well, no, it doesn't make it tougher. It almost evens things out. The Braves come over and there's a wild card, so it almost evens things out. It still makes it.
But the Phillies sort of came out of nowhere last year. You know that under the current setup, and despite the fact the Expos had 94 wins last year, they wouldn't have made the playoffs.
But we should point out there's some writers. Jeff Blair, I believe, Jack Romanelli of the Gazette did pick the Phillies to win the National League East.
Picked them second.
I picked the Expos. You picked the Expos.
I picked Phillies, Expos, Cardinals.
Last year I picked the Expos to win, and Philippe Alou said anybody who picked the Expos to win last year was crazy.
Oh, I picked Expos, Phillies, Cardinals. I'm sorry.
I know what you meant.
Yeah. All right.
But I picked them based on the fact that I didn't think the Phillies were going to be that strong, and I really projected as Jack Clark being their first baseman. I really thought he would add something. Who knew about Frank Bullock? I wonder if Bullock was in the lineup for the Pirates yesterday.
That's interesting. The Phillies, of course, I think more than anything else, you mentioned John Kruk and Terry Mulholland, they have a huge question mark in their bullpen. They did have one solid member last year, and say what you want about Mitch Williams giving up the home run to Joe Carter, but here's a guy who you could give the ball to, and he'd put it in the, it wasn't pretty, but he'd put it into the bank for you, and they don't have that guy right now, and you can't win without that.
All right, National League East, give me your top 3.
Braves, Expos, and boy, anybody. It's not very good behind that. The Phillies are the best of the bunch, but what's left now? The Mets and the Marlins?
Yeah, Braves, Expos, Phillies. Yeah. That's
Braves, Expos, Phillies.
And I agree with Elliott. Braves and Expos very tight, and Phillies a couple of notches below that.
And then another drop off to what's left.
I'll buck the trend, Expos, Braves, Phillies.
Okay, the problem is what happens behind the other division winners.
Right.
Can the Expos get in if they finish behind the Braves? Because Houston and St. Louis look like they're going to be strong in the Central.
Cincinnati.
And Cincinnati. The Dodgers are improved. And
Giants
the Giants
are
have
great.
a pretty good team.
Giants
You know,
are
if the
great team.
Rockies get any pitching at all, that's a good lineup they've got.
The Expos are in the playoffs this year. It'd be nice to see some people in the park as a result.
Wouldn't it be weird if they finished first ahead of the Braves and got in that way, and the Braves got in as a second-place team with all the things that have happened over the years?
Well, we got to wrap up, and the season's on. Opening day in a couple of days. So Elliott Price will be back during the season. You'll be doing the games on CIQC, and you can also hear Elliott mornings on the Joe Cannon Show and the Aaron Rand Show on CIQC and Q92. Mitch, of course, on the Drive Show on CIQC from 5 to 6, and me,
Sunday night.
8 to 11.
Bye.
Take care.
Sports Hot Seat is brought to you in part by Sport Buff in Plaza Lexus Neon, where you'll find the entire line of starter sportswear. Sports Hot Seat is brought to you in part by Sport Buff in Plaza Lexus Neon, where you'll find the entire line of starter sportswear.
Welcome to another edition of the Sports Hot Seat. I'm Mitch Garber with Mitch Melnick. And Mitch, today I got to let you introduce our guest because he's a lot of things. He's a super fan. He's a taxi driver in Montreal for 35 years. He's the father of a very old and dear friend of yours, and he's very well known in this city for a whole bunch of other reasons.
Well, that's a pretty good introduction right there. He's probably the most famous taxi driver in the city, and certainly the most famous Expos fan. In some cases, some former Expos would say most infamous fan. Commonly known as Manush, and we'll get into why he's called Manush a little later. He is, in fact, Jerry Price, father of Elliott of CIQC and Expos baseball. It's a pleasure to have you in with us.
Pleasure to be here.
Now, you've been getting a lot of playing time lately. Ron Roosh did a special, the Expos Year in Crisis, which I think everyone would agree this is. And you were the only, I guess, non-official baseball person who was interviewed on that show.
Well, not that I have to brag, but not many people have seen more ball games than I have, and talking under the major league level. And also I go to spring training every year since 1971, and I think I know a little bit about baseball.
1969, season ticket holder from 1969 through 1993. Not a season ticket holder in 1994. How come?
Well, I don't know how you call this justice, but a fan like me who's been a baseball fan and a season ticket holder for 25 years, and you raise my ticket from $15 to $22. As you know, I'm only a cab driver, and I have to be able to afford this year. So I've decided that I want to go to spring training for a month, and I gave up my season tickets.
But you could conceivably go to ball games for a lot less money than the $22.
No question about it. I'm fairly on an age. I can go as a senior citizen for $3, which is an excellent buy. I also have a lot of friends who have season tickets, and once in a while, my son Elliott will get me a free ticket.
It's fair to say you're a baseball junkie, baseball freak. How did it start, this addiction to baseball? When and how did it start?
I've been a baseball freak, I could say, since I'm maybe 3 or 4 years old. I could remember, I lived on City Hall Street, and I used to take a ball and bang it up against the wall. And my mother used to go nuts, and all I ever thought about was baseball. When I became 14, I went to every Royal game as much as I could. I used to bump school just to go to, we used to start in the afternoon in those days. I used to not go to school, just to go to a ball game. And as I got 15 and 16 years old, I used to travel to the city of the All-Star game just to watch a ball game, save up my few dollars, and with $100 you can go on vacation in those days. Today it costs that just to buy a ticket.
Well, being a super fan is one thing, and taking it another step and following a team around, going to different cities, and being as vocal as you have been for 25 years, going on 26 now, is taking it to another level. Were you like that as a kid? You were always mouthy?
Always. Very, very vocal. I could remember guys like Jimmy Gentile begging me just to leave him alone. Bobby Wilson once came in the stands after me, and I said to him, hit me, I need the money.
But you got a kid, that was part of your entertainment, going to the ball games, was yelling at the guys, whether on the Expos or on the opposing team, who weren't delivering what you considered to be your money's worth.
That's exactly. I only rip guys who I don't think give out. If I pay my dollar, I want entertainment, and they have to put out for me. They have 3 hours a day. That's all they have to put out for me. And if they don't, they hear from me.
I want to just interject for a minute, because Mitch, you've known Jerry for I don't know how many years, 20?
Not that long,
15?
Since about 12 years.
So you may think that some of the things that he does are normal. I've only learned of them a few minutes ago before we went on the air, and I'll tell you, he scores not only every Expo game, every game he watches on television. Those that he can't watch on television, he has tapes delivered to him, and then scores the games at home watching the games on tape.
He's got his own league, right?
I have my own statistics for every game that I can tell you. Terry Enyart, 1 error.
Lefty.
That's my statistics with Terry Enyart.
He was a lefty pitcher.
That's right. That's my statistics with him. 1 error. He remains in my Expo statistics for life.
When was the last time you watched a game, 9 innings or more, and didn't score it?
Never happened.
That's your stat. Never happened.
Not even internationally. Never happened.
So
I drive my cab. I listen to the Expos play. I scored a game. People look
I'm sure
at me.
your
What are you doing,
passengers are
sir?
thrilled.
What are you doing, sir? I'm marking a ball game.
Now, you've had some pretty famous passengers in your cab, right?
Oh yeah, I've driven a lot of famous people. I've driven Gordie Howe. I've driven Bobby Hull. I've driven Wayne Gretzky. I had Gretzky, Messier, and Kevin Lowe in my car at the same time. They went to a football game here in Montreal, and Edmonton Eskimos were playing. I don't know if it was the Concords or the Alouettes in those days. And I had the 3 of them in my car at the same time.
Yeah, there's the day when $1 million was $1 million, Jerry, on the screen.
And there's 6 of them right there. What was your feeling as someone who grew up without a major league team in your city when you did get one in 1968 and the first year 69?
Well, when you don't have anything, you don't miss it. So to me, well, I don't know how you say it. Outside of my children, outside of my birth of my children, the greatest thing that could happen to me is to go to a ball game. I mean, people, I don't know what people like in life. I don't know what you like in life. To me, I love baseball so much. I could remember my late wife, when the Expos used to lose, and I used to come home, she used to say, oh, the crazy guy's coming, and she used to put herself under the cover and make herself like she's sleeping. And well, I used to take baseball really, really to heart. I mean, it doesn't bother me now that the Expos don't win. I'd love to see them win, don't get me wrong. But, like, I don't take it. Since my heart attack in 1989, I learned that there are things in life beside baseball.
Not many.
Not many. But I would still rather,
none as important.
I would still rather go to a baseball game than eat supper or go with a woman.
I didn't know you had a heart attack. Did you become less vocal and less freaked out after the heart attack?
No. I became less vocal for only one reason.
They were a better team.
No. I have a son by the name of Elliott Price, who was a broadcaster for the Montreal Expos. Now, I don't want to harm his situation in any way, and I was told that if I would tone myself down, Elliott would get the job, and it happened.
So let me ask you this then.
And I'm happy. I veil very little.
Let me ask you this. What could bring you more pleasure than for your son to be the play-by-play guy?
Nothing.
For the Montreal Expos?
Nothing. It's the dream that I've had all my life. All my life is the broadcaster. But my days when I went to try and get the job, as you guys have, I was told that I have to have X amount of school years, which I didn't have. I only finished grade 7.
I don't have either, Jerry.
No, I'm just saying. But you guys don't need it anymore. With me, I applied for jobs, and each one told me, not enough schooling. Today, I mean, I speak to, like Bob McDevitt, I was on the show a few times. He couldn't believe a guy like me never got into, like, some broadcasting. You know, I mean, my voice is pretty good, and my knowledge is
voice is pretty good. Who is the guy that you rode the most, the Expo?
The guy that I ripped the most?
Yeah.
I would say Terry Francona.
Why?
Well, he did a certain incident in spring training. Had a friend, his girlfriend liked Terry Francona. So I said to Terry, can you do me a favor? I need an autographed baseball for a woman that likes you. Oh, he said to me, no problem. This is at 12 o'clock and a spring training game that starts at 1. And at 1 o'clock, I'm still standing there waiting, and he keeps telling me 1 minute, 1 minute, 1 minute. He never gives me the ball. And I start to yell at him during the game. I mean, that Mr. Bronfman himself asked me why you're yelling at him. I said, I don't need his baseball. All he had to do was tell me no. You make me stand there for an hour like an idiot. And then during the season, they were going to send him down. And he came over to me. I still have a picture of myself with arguing with him in the Gazette. And he comes over to me and he says to me, it's your fault. You ripped me out and you made me into this and that. And it's your fault that they want to send me down. And I said to him, I don't even acknowledge you as a person. And I give it to him pretty good for about a year.
And now he's managing Michael Jordan.
And now he's managing Michael Jordan.
With Francona, before we get to this, oh no, Schmidt thing. Francona was a guy on a plane who burned the Canadian $2 bill during the last trip back to Montreal at the end of the season, as an indication of how upset he was about having to return to this city. So I also think that spoke volumes about Terry Francona.
You know, I even told him that you should be ashamed to be Tito's son. I told it to him to his face. This guy would have loved to kill me.
A lot of people would.
But he was a great hitter. If he hadn't ripped up his knee, he could have won a batting title.
100%. He was a tremendous ball player. I mean, this guy won the Athlete of the Year award.
Okay, your take on what we just saw, part of the reason why the Expos didn't win when they should have won at some point, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83. Your take on why they didn't win.
The reason? There's not even a question in my mind. If you watch Toronto, whatever they need, they go out and get. The only time that we ever went out to get anything, in 79, 80, 81, 82, we're one player away. If they go out and get that one ball player, I don't know what money, not big money involved in those days, if they go out and get that one ball player, we might have won it. We gambled guys like Milner, and we brought Staub back. Staub, who was such a tremendous ball player, who even after he left us was a good ball, for some reason did not play good for us and wanted to play good for us. But in 89, when we dealt for Langston, that's the only year. I mean, you know, you'll have to be a little bit mad at a trade to give up a Randy Johnson. But
they got Rondell White out of it.
No, but I'm not mad. I mean, I'll make the trade again tomorrow. We're in first place. We get this guy's a tremendous pitcher till today. There's no question that Leinster's a tremendous, not good, he's a tremendous pitcher. And that's the trade that I would still make again.
I agree with you.
Unfortunately, I think we went 0-6 in September, and that was our problem. We didn't win.
They did go out and get, not only did they get Langston, and when they got even closer, they went out and got Candelaria, although he didn't pitch well. They got Jim Dwyer to come off the bench.
And Candelaria never pitched good for us either.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unfortunate, but in 79, 80, 81, 82, we won more games than any team in baseball. Not to win a pennant. We won a fluky division there with a short season, but never to win a pennant with those guys. And that was a good ball club.
So you're not a McHale fan? Or are you a McHale fan?
Oh, definitely not. McHale and I, in fact, turned out to be total enemies. I ripped him in those days for not getting us ball players. That I was at a World Series in '84, and came up this year's story, and someone said to him, who does he think he is, an authority of baseball? And I was with this guy, Johnny Elias. And Johnny Elias said to him, you know, I'll tell you a story. Here's a man that pays every year. He has his own season tickets. He knows his baseball. And if he's a little bit vocal, then he has a right to be. And he backed away.
So speaking of the man who pays for all his tickets, I mean, you're Joe fan. Well, you're more than Joe fan. But the way the game is going right now, and we'll talk about Montreal in a minute, but the way the game is going, building new stadiums, luxury boxes, having to charge more money for food, to pay players. The Blue Jays pay $50 million. The Expos pay $20 million. There's disparity even there. It affects Joe Fan, who drives a taxi, who could pay $3, but is saying, well, why can't I sit closer to the action? It's just not like that anymore.
Oh, I agree with you 100%. I mean, but the unfortunate thing is that the ball player whose salaries escalated, where the cab drivers just got a little bit better. You know, I mean, I'll be very honest. I lived better 20 years ago making less money as a cab driver than I make today. I mean, I don't work very much today. I'm old, you know. I'm not an old man, but driving 35 years a cab, I'm what you call burnt out. So I can't afford to go out and earn the money that I used to. I could work 15, 16 hours a day. If I work 3 hours, it's a lot.
So you understand why your seats became $22 or $25?
No, you can't raise 44%. You want to raise me $2, $3 a ticket? By all means. To raise $7 on a $15 ticket?
And
positively not.
And if the difference is between the survival of the team in this city and not, what do you choose?
Well, I don't have a say in this matter because it's guys like, if you watch the Montreal Expos, they draw 12,000, 14,000 people. They're in a pennant race in September and they can't get 25,000 people. So it's not up to me because I'm still going to go to the ball game. And if I have to, I'm still going to pay for a ticket. I won't pay $15 for a ticket, but I'm still going to go to every ball game. I mean, I've only missed in 25 years 75 games at the most. And that's because I'm a Jewish man and I don't go to ball games on my Jewish holidays. Otherwise, I maybe would miss none.
They sold all those tickets. The tickets that they raised, the VIP seats, those are all sold.
Yeah, they sold those, but what about the people that took those tickets were from the lesser tickets, but they didn't sell those lesser tickets. Last year they had 8,500 season tickets, this year 7,000.
But more money came from this year's 7,000 than from last year's 8,500. And that's the name of the game. They're trying to generate more money.
But less revenue in the ballpark. You get less people in the ballpark. People spend less money. They're gonna make as much money from 7,000 from 8,500 without a question in seat selling, but not in revenue what they bring into a ballpark.
Well, they'll probably make more in revenue in the ballpark because now they run all the concessions where they used to have all the different franchises running them. They're not in good shape.
Sorry.
Oh, there's no question. It's going to be the sorriest day of my life, outside again of losing a parent or, you know, but when Montreal Expos are definitely going to be moving out of the city. I mean, there's no way that this year's city can have a major league ball club. You can't have it on 12,000 people. We don't have enough fans to come to the ball game. This is not a major league city for drawing people.
Even if the team wins.
But you can't win every year.
The only thing that could help him is they have to win. But if they win now in '94 and they don't win in '95, we'll go back to being what we were in '93.
What happened between Delormier Downs, 79, 80, 81, where they were drawing over $2 million a season, and now what happened between these three eras?
You're joking. Toronto. You go to Toronto, you look at the ball fans, and I know people who were all my friends many years ago, 75% of these guys live in Toronto. They get 45 and 50,000 a game.
So the 3 million that have stayed here will not produce a fan base, is what you're saying.
I would say that most of the good Anglophones that came to the ballpark, I could remember we had our own section. We used to sit 50, 60 guys all together in Royal Stadium. I really don't understand till today why these same guys that I watched, many of them are dead, but the guys even who are alive and are 65 and 70 years old, how they don't still go to a ball game, I don't understand it. I don't know what they do with their life.
You have become a Blue Jays fan?
100%. I cheer for the Blue Jays, 100%.
What do you like about them?
They're a Canadian team, and they're a winner. And they give me more ball games. Can you imagine living in Montreal and I get more Toronto games on my TSN station than Montreal Expo games? Montreal give 25 games only. You know, I'll tell you the truth. You might think I'm not normal, but every night when the Blue Jays are blacked out here on TSN, it comes on at 3 a.m. I tape this game and I mark it the next day.
I didn't need that to think he wasn't normal, but
tell us about John Bateman. Because I'm going to I'll preface your answer by telling you that Bateman for years didn't come to the city once he retired. Goes to one of those old-timers games, first time, steps out of the dugout. After all these years in Montreal, the first voice he hears on the field at Olympic Stadium is Manouche welcoming him back, and it wasn't a friendly welcome.
John, you're a bum. I'll tell you, I had a great, I have also a picture of that also in the Gazette one day. I used to rip this guy immensely. This guy couldn't hit, he couldn't field, he couldn't run, he couldn't do a thing. How he got into Major League, I don't know. And this guy here, and one day I said to him, you know, John, and I'm yelling, and I said, sitting, I think in section 105 in Jerry Park, and I'm really giving it to him, and I said to him, John, you want to hit that ball? You think it's my head. And as that ball comes, I said, you hit it. And I tell you, he hits the longest home run of his lifetime. And he comes around the bases, and he walks over to me, and he takes off his cap, and he bows down to me. And Gene Mock ripped him to him and said, you're going to start with this guy? He said to him. And after that, every time he didn't hit the ball or he didn't get a hit, I used to yell to him, bow down now, Big John.
Any other players who used to rip acknowledge you?
Oh, yeah, like Bob Bailey.
Is that your favorite right there?
By all means. Gary Carter?
Yeah.
The nicest human being I've ever met as a ball player in my entire life. I've never heard this guy say no to me. You know, I'll tell you another good story. I had a woman, her name was Sarah. She was about 80 years old. She came over to me one day, she said to me, are you Mr. Manouche? I said, yes. She says, you know, when you die, 150 kids are going to say to you that you got them an autographed ball by Gary Carter. I've never seen this man say no. I sat to him in West Palm Beach this year for 3 innings.
Yep.
I could not believe if he didn't sit in 3 innings to sign 200-300 autographs. And I said to him, Gary, how do you still do it? He's Gary.
What a day that was 2 years ago, the last at bat.
we'll cut it. We'll cut it before Laker comes in and takes his place at second base.
I'll tell you one thing. It has to be one of his main thrills. In fact, I said to him, Gary, when you're going into the Hall of Fame, which I believe he is, I don't know if everybody believes, but I definitely believe he is. I mean, a man who caught the most games and
It's got to be
300 home runs as a catcher. And I said to him, Gary, when you go into the Hall of Fame, which cap are you wearing? And he said, Montreal Expos.
Did you get to know Pete Rose at all the year that he spent here?
Well, I got to know him a little bit. I mean, in fact, my son who works in Florida, Jeffrey, he was there for a while, and he met him one day in the flea market, and they were talking about it, and he said to him, oh, I remember your dad pretty good. He's the one who yells.
You don't think there's any doubt he should be in the Hall of Fame?
Without a question in my mind. I mean, a man who has the most hits in the history of baseball. It's not just, I mean, they have to prove that he bet on baseball, which they didn't. What people think is another thing, but they have to prove it. And if they don't, Pete Rose should definitely 100% be in the Hall of Fame.
You know what the thing that people who want him in the Hall of Fame say, people who have been watching baseball for as long as Jerry has, is there are so many guys in that Hall of Fame who have done so much worse than Pete Rose has done. That's really a travesty to the game of baseball, not to look back and see I mean, like every other walk of life, there are rapists, robbers, thieves, fraud artists in that Hall of Fame.
Absolutely.
Oh, 100%. Plenty of them.
Racists. Ty Cobb was a misery. You'll all be watching the movie with Tommy Lee Jones this summer. He was one of the most miserable human beings that ever walked the planet. And he's there. And he was also involved in a gambling scandal, and yet he stays in the Hall of Fame.
And the commissioner of baseball, Landis, acknowledged that he was involved in gambling. If you read his book, I have his book. Of course, I have many.
You have. Yeah, tell us if we walked into your place, what would we see?
What would we trip over?
I have maybe 3,000 programs. I have 900 hard-covered sport books. I have 5 full bookcases.
Do you have room for anything but a TV and a VCR?
Do you need anything other than a TV and a VCR?
It's a monument to baseball, right?
Well,
what's your most prized possession?
I don't keep anything. That's to me. The books that I have, I only get books autographed. I have no autographs of baseballs. I give all my autographed baseballs and I get them for my grandchildren. I don't keep them for myself. A baseball, it doesn't thrill me. The only thing I have, their books. If I can get them autographed, I get them autographed. Like I have Stan Musial, Ted Williams. You know, if I can get them autographed, that's the only autographs that I keep.
Quick story about Manouche and how it affected me briefly. I walk into the Expos clubhouse one night after a game. Mike Fitzgerald signals me over. He says, your dad is getting real loud. And I'm looking around, and he's talking to me. And I said, Mike, that's Elliott's father. I'm Mitch. That's Elliott's father you're talking about. And he apologized. Oh, I'm sorry. And he must have said something to Elliott after that, because on more than one occasion, people have confused Elliott and I, because especially when we used to work together.
Your voices are very similar.
But have you spared anybody that you didn't like as a ball player, that you decided for whatever reason that you weren't going to get on them?
No. If I don't like the guys in trouble.
After deep reflection.
In fact, Mike Fitzgerald, with all reflections to your good buddy Terry Haig, who I think doesn't know too much about baseball, when he told me, the day I stopped talking to Terry Haig and the day I stopped calling your show because of him, is because he told me that Mike Fitzgerald is the 3rd greatest clutch hitter the Montreal Expos ever had. I lost my respect for him that day. Mike Fitzgerald.
Fitzgerald was a heady guy who caught a good game, handled the pitching staff very well, wasn't an easy out, came up with the occasional big hit, and I think injuries to his hands really ruined what would have been, I think, a decent major league career.
In 1985, the New York Mets had 5 catchers. He was listed number 5, and he never got higher on my list.
Okay, let me ask you about the argument about, you mentioned booing before, and I liked what you said. If you felt that a guy wasn't putting out, and I agree. I once booed Willie Davis at Jerry Park. He loafed, he misplayed a fly ball to center field, and he loafed all the way back to the center field wall. It was an inside the park home run. He heard it from me the next time he came to the plate. But I think if a guy is bad, or screws up on the field, or makes a fielding error, then I don't think you should boo just because he's not playing up to your expectations. If he's trying out there, why boo?
I have never booed a ball player for an error. Believe me, never. I boo a ball player, like I say, for their attitude. Like, you take the same Gary Carter. I booed this guy in 77, 78 unmercifully.
You booed him?
Yeah. I used to boo Gary Carter. Because Gary Carter came up as the phenom. Yet he wasn't the phenom in 77, 78. And I could still remember, I was in West Palm Beach in 1979, and his wife Sandy came over to me and said to me, you know, Manouche, it's about time you left Gary alone. And I looked at her and I said, you know something? You're right. Because he's becoming the ball player that I expected him to be. And I think we could win. And I have never booed Gary Carter since that day.
How do you boo a guy for other people saying he's supposed to be a star? Do you boo Cliff Floyd if he hits 200?
Do I boo Cliff Floyd? No, but I wouldn't. I'm not talking about on 1 year. But if 3 years from now Cliff Floyd is at the same level, I would definitely boo Cliff Floyd.
You ever booed the Shields?
Well, of course. I mean, I had some pretty rough ones. The Shields was another one of these guys that only played when he wanted his first year or two. And this guy, it goes to show that I'm right, that this guy was a better ball player than he played in his first 2 years here.
I'm kind of tired of talking about the DeShields trade, but I think we'd be doing a disservice to our viewers if we didn't ask Jerry Price his position on the Delino DeShields trade.
Well, I would never have changed the line of the Shields because I don't have a second baseman to take his place. I don't think Mike Lansing is a major league starter. In fact, you couldn't tell me too many teams that this guy Mike Lansing could make. I mean, you media, I don't know, you guys or the media has made Mike Lansing into a tremendous ball player. So I would never have traded the line of the Shields because I can't replace the line of the Shields. Had I traded, and as much as I don't want to trade a Grissom or a Walker, as much
you
as
had a Rondell White.
Exactly. I have a Rondell White, a Curtis Pride, a Cliff Floyd. I could replace my outfielder. I can't replace the line of the Shields. And also, from what people tell me, and I'm people who know that the Shields was a very, very big factor in the clubhouse.
Absolutely.
So he was a tremendous guy that the Montreal Expos, but it's strictly money. You know, next year you're going to trade Walker. He's going to go. They just can't keep these guys.
Claude Rochoux insists it was a baseball move that Dan Duquette made on his own.
Well, he's the only one in the city who continues to say that.
Well, but he's in a position to say it.
But
I
think he's trying to justify the move, and I think it's about time he just leveled with people.
I would accept if it was a money move.
Yeah, I think people would understand the situation. But
That's right.
Don't try to pretend it's not about money.
But I don't believe that anybody could make a trade without Brashear giving his okay, money-wise. I don't believe.
How did Jerry Price become Manush?
Well, in 1939, there was a ball player by the name of Henry Hinkle Heine Hank Manush. My friend found this baseball card. This guy's a pretty good ball player.
Detroit,
330,
right?
That's why he played Detroit, Washington, Boston. 330 lifetime batting average. Too bad I haven't got my jacket. I would show you. I keep his card in my pocket. And one of my friends, I was a pretty good ball player, and I was a little of a funny kid. So when they found the name Henry Hinkle Heine Hank Manush, this guy Normie Endler, I don't even know where he is today. He's a teacher somewhere in Chicago. Said, geez, let's call him Manush. I've been on Manush since that day.
I'd like to see that name on the back of a sweater.
I tell you something better, that when I was young, if you called me Jerry, I didn't turn around.
And today?
Well, today a lot of people call me Jerry.
Yeah.
Because when you get married and your wife doesn't like the name Manush, so she insists that a lot of guys call you Jerry. And today a lot of people do call me Jerry.
Well, Jerry, we'll see you at the ballpark, I hope.
I guarantee
He's
it.
there.
All
He's
right.
there.
He's not.
I tell you what I'll do with you. I guarantee I'll go to every game.
Well, then we'll see you at every game. It's been a pleasure having you on the Sports Hot Seat. Mitch Melnick and I will be back again next week with another edition of the Hot Seat. And until then, thanks for watching. Jerry Price.
Sports Hot Seat is brought to you in part by Sport Buff in Plaza Lexus Neon, where you'll find the entire line of starter sportswear.